Welcome to the 2 Gig Tech Tip. Today we're going to talk a little bit about loss of supervision. Something we've all seen, something we all hate to deal with, especially when we're no longer on site with the panel. It always makes things a little bit harder to troubleshoot if you're not physically there with the panel. That being said, loss of supervision has some very simple steps you can check to make sure before doing a truck roll what might be the cause. First and foremost, I always recommend when having a loss of supervision is to check your programming. Now, before I go into that, I do want to note that basically all a loss of supervision is that the panel is no longer seeing a signal from that zone or that sensor. And that could be from day one. So it could be an install that you just did and you're now getting that loss of supervision all the way to a sensor that was installed months or even years ago and is now showing loss of supervision. So first and foremost, I start with is checking programming. After programming's been verified, I verify things like equipment code, because if it's an E-Series sensor, you gotta remember you need to use the correct E-Series equipment code for that sensor type. Also serial number. A lot of times we learn in zones and sometimes we may pick up a serial number from a different contact. So I always like to verify serial numbers by tampering the sensor after I get out of programming, make sure that's the correct one that responds. The other thing is loop numbers, making sure those are correctly programmed in and the sensor responds appropriately. After that, usually what I like to do is go ahead and just check the batteries. Make sure that your batteries are good. If you have to go out on site, that's the first one I usually check. I check to make sure the sensor doesn't look damaged and that there's no problems with it. But then I'm going to go ahead and check battery levels. And I'm going to meter each battery and verify based upon the spec sheet what the voltage is that's required for that sensor. And make sure that that battery is meeting those requirements. That way I can assure that there's enough power hitting that sensor for it to be able to transmit. After that, I usually like to test other sensors or talk to my customer before I go on the job site and verify that other sensors are responding and that the panel is picking up those transmissions. After all that's been verified, the next thing I do is try bringing the panel and sensor closer to each other, whether that involves moving the panel and bringing it on backup battery or bringing the sensor off the wall and bring it closer to the panel. But what I want to do is make sure that distance or environment is no longer a factor. If I start getting transmissions, then my first resolution is going to be, hey, let's add a repeater to this situation. That way we can repeat that signal and bring that sensor and panel to a closer working scenario. Now let's say programming's correct, battery's correct, your range isn't a problem, your panel's picking up all other sensors. Simply then at that point, I'm going to try another sensor in that zone. Now, one thing I do have that's also kind of a side tip that sometimes I try is I'll try sometimes reprogramming that same sensor into a different zone number. But usually that's like my last resort before just flat out swapping the sensor. Now keep in mind that you do need to go through these steps and also reach out to our tech support department to get that RMA returned if the sensor is under warranty. But again, these are just some good tips and tricks to follow if ever you're experiencing a loss of supervision on one of your sensors in your programming of in your panel. Keep in mind that will apply to the GC2, GC2E, GC3, GC3E, as well as the 2 Gig Edge panel. And these are just some great tips and things we're going to try and put out there for you guys to make sure that you're up to date and have the proper troubleshooting steps to help you become a better technician as well as help us better troubleshoot your problems and concerns. That concludes our training today, and thank you for your time. Hope that you guys have a great rest of the day and good experiences out there, and thank you again for choosing 2 Gig.